Nestled high in the Rocky Mountains and broadcasting from the Pineapple to the Big Apple. As sure as the north wind blows and the South Sea flows, the Conspirati Show begins now.
Welcome to the Conspirati Podcast with your host, Josh Edwards, with his co-host, also in the Rocky Mountains, but remotely, James Conor. We're here today on the Conspirati Podcast to talk about all things conspiracy, Illuminati, the elites that are running the world, aliens, paranormal, any other weird shit that happens to be out in the universe today that is controlling what we see, what we do, and what we hear. Today's podcast specifically will be about the coronavirus. It's in the news today. A lot of conspiracies as far as where did it come from, how did it get released, and what is really happening in China. So, James, you've done a lot of research. You've expanded your mind around the coronavirus. You've seen it from all angles. What actually is the coronavirus, and where are we at kind of today? What are the straight facts as we know it from the reliable sources?
Well, now, if by research you mean I smoked a bunch of pot and clicked on about 10 or 20 websites, then absolutely, that's pretty much precisely what I did. But looking at this big whole mess, I don't know about anybody else out there, but this one kind of kicked me up into quite the fervor of oh no, I need to buy bottled water and shotgun shells, canned food. I was ready to go.
Just shells, or did you buy a shotgun too?
Well, I'm getting to that part, but have you ever seen the prices of a shotgun? It's not cheap. I mean, the shells are really economical. I bought a whole fucking box of them, but yeah, that got to save up. So I'm hoping we got about another 2 to 3 pay periods until the virus hits here. I'll be good to go. But kind of looking at this, I generally don't fall for the "we're all gonna die" narrative the news likes to give us. SARS, H1N1, MERS, all of that. I heard about them, looked at the news. The news promptly told me we're all gonna die, and oh, thank God. All right, it's nothing. The news is telling us we're all gonna die. But with coronavirus, it was a bit weird because they went with that playbook right off the top. It was, we're all going to die. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And kind of as the numbers kept going up, they really pivoted and went to the nothing to see here, folks. And once that happened is when I got a little bit concerned and started looking into it more and found all sorts of fun stuff.
Do you find it odd that China was known to see here? It's kind of their MO.
Well, and that's
in general.
That's the crux of the matter, Josh. It's that I just don't fucking know. And if something like this is happening in, I don't know, Mongolia, at least I could believe what I was being told, because I think this whole thing is on a spectrum. That spectrum consisting of what the official Chinese narrative is and what the fuck you see on Twitter. Somewhere in between there is the truth. And I'd always been under the impression that the Chinese were exceptionally good at arithmetic. Turns out, looking at these numbers that they're putting out, I don't think they're that good at it. Because from what we know from a fact...
Long division, you have to go down a whole path of math.
Well, and
start with one number.
It's the transient properties of it, really. You forget to carry that too, and your official tally of 78,657 people infected could actually be 78 million infected. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been looking at on it. And as it stands today, February 22nd, the official New York Times kind of infection numbers are 78,733 confirmed cases worldwide, with 2,461 fatalities. So, if you ask Twitter, the world's on fire and we've got about 6 hours left.
And Twitter, of course, being the most reliable of sources.
Generally speaking, I mean, that's where I try to get my news for really everything. And plus, if I ever need a quick pick-me-up, I can always look at a picture of a cat with bread on its face.
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting. So we got about 2,400 people that have died, so it's about, 3% of the entire world's population. But interesting that China today, added 23,000 confirmed cases to the count.
Well, and see, here's the thing. I mean, to kind of look at this like holistically, like I again, like I miss the days of making a murder when everybody you ran into became an instant expert on the criminal justice system, forensics, criminal defense, you name it. This one is turning everybody I know at least into junior epidemiologists, and it's really getting kind of painful because I am a moron. So even though I'm a skeptical moron, which is really the only reason I think I've made it to the age that I have, um, I don't know. I have a tendency to maybe they are right. But I started having to do my own research on this, and I kind of stripped it down and went to brass tacks. What the fuck is a virus? We've all got them. I've got some on my computer. Those are more of the sexually transmitted type of viruses, based on my filthy viewing habits. But so you start looking at this stuff, and you really kind of realize what a bunch of fucking apes we are as a species. Because there's a big debate in the scientific community as to whether or not a virus is a living thing or not. They can't even agree on that. And effectively, kind of what I've been able to find on this is, no one knows the origin. No one can really agree on whether or not a virus is a living thing or not. There's a bunch of theories as to where and why and how it came from. One of the ones that I kind of liked was the basically viruses are just former bits of genetic material just kind of floating out there. That's kind of why certain ones fit with certain types of cells and affect different parts of the human body and X, Y, and Z. But yeah, they're hateful, living or non-living bastards. They really, really do suck. They are so hardcore that every living thing on this rock can get and be affected by a virus. Bacteria can get and be affected by a virus. I mean, I suppose you could probably give it antibiotics, but I don't know. Maybe that's more of the sweeping clear, the divine win for the bacteria. But yeah, there's really two types of viruses out there. There's some that can be DNA or RNA. I got to pick one of them. That's that. And then even looking more at it, it's kind of what viruses do as they move along. So effectively, this is just this floating piece of junk out there, and its only job is to make more floating pieces of junk. But it cannot do that by itself, right? And that's really kind of the demarc point between a living organism and a non-living organism is it can't reproduce by itself, right? Even though every time I've caught in a virus, I have told it to go fuck itself, it doesn't do that. It continues to fuck me.
Well, the good news is, speaking of fucking, there's already coronavirus pouring up on Pornhub. I just checked because I wanted to know if that's how you got your virus. It didn't take long, but it's already there. So if anyone is listening that would like to view apparently the way to solve that, Pornhub's the place to go.
And that really that recommendation kind of scales to everything, not just viruses. I mean, if you I don't know, need to figure out how to change the light bulb in your Grand Cherokee, you could probably find that on Pornhub. Of course, they'll be fucking in the Grand Cherokee and then get to the part about how you change your light, but that's neither here nor there. I digress. Yeah, so looking at this thing though, like I said, I don't know about you, Josh, but it really just kind of worked me up into this frenzy because I so many times I'd seen that playbook of the just don't panic or we're all going to die. But you start blending those two narratives together, and I'm watching the numbers go up and up and up and up. I don't like it. I certainly don't like it.
I'm personally less concerned the numbers going up versus where it actually came from, right? There's a biologics lab right there in Wuhan, which I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, that just happens to be there. This virus also, if I'm recalling from our facts section, seems to be more lethal, more contagious to Asian folks. And as of right now, I think lethality-wise, I think it's twice as deadly towards Asian men, not Asian men, sorry, but men in general versus women. And I'm just kind of curious where a virus like that would come from. We've heard about bats being a source, which would be an interesting vector, right? Because not like anything else that we would eat or be in a lot of contact with, unless someone's got a artisanal bat store in China that I'm not aware of.
Now, see, that's, I don't know. Clearly, I'd advise you to stay away from Twitter, because you can go on Twitter and you look at that market. There are people. Fuck, man, I don't know if it's real. That's again the biggest issue. I have too much information coming at me on this damn thing, and I don't know if any of that information is true. But you can look at people literally eating bat soup, where there's a big ass bowl of soup and a bat that looks like it's hanging out in a goddamn jacuzzi. So that's based on that market that is what, 800 yards away or something absurd like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's possible. It just seems like an odd thing to make the jump, from bat to man bat. And if so, I want to turn into Batman. Maybe that is the end state if you don't die. Maybe it's kind of like one of those, things like Dune, right? You drink the truth sayer stuff and you end up on the other side. Magical powers. Maybe this turns you into Batman.
Well, how many goddamn zombie movies or vampire movies how many movies start this way? That's what I'm saying. Again, being an idiot and getting these little pieces of information, but watching a bunch of those types of movies and shows and that whole genre, I'm like, fuck, I know how this works. And then I'm sitting here torn as to whether or not, like, I basically, okay, so take this into worst case scenario. The world catches on fire, global economy crash, we're rolling through a post-apocalyptic hellscape. I have enough supplies to make the last 6 months of my life exceptionally miserable. I'd rather get it on the front end. I'm just trying to be pragmatic about it. But I mean, back to your statistics real quick, like, the thing that I find to be about as consistent as gravity when they say that it's affecting Asians and killing Asians much more. Well, there's a lot more Asians in China. That's where I'm going to go ahead and hang my hat on that. Because when it comes to conspiracies or really kind of anything, I try to use Occam's razor, simplest answer, generally the best. But then you start looking down the numbers of the lethality of it. There's a lot that plays into it. There's so many different variables. I mean, for one thing, if you look at the rate of, absolutely right, it's killing way more men than women. But of those men, they all smoke. They smoke their faces off constantly. Women smoke what, orders of magnitude less than men do in China. It's like 80% of all men smoke and like 10% of women smoke. So if you're going into the fight of your life with shitbag lungs,
True.
That's
It's
a
an
reason.
interesting vector, though, as well. If you're thinking about, if it escaped from a lab, could it be targeted towards China's traditional enemies, which are Japan, Korea, except for North, they're kind of buddies there. You also have Hong Kong. We don't hear much about the protests today. Not that China was planning to release it, but could have been a tailored biological weapon. Because you're looking at those bats, right? And it's like, oh, the bats is a nice, easy, racist way to go, like those Chinese folks eating those bats, gross. Versus using Occam's razor, what's right down the street? A lab with viruses, bacterias, other biologics that could be being used for good or ill.
Well, here's a fun fact about Occam's razor. It really works well for cutting
Yeah,
bat wings up.
I mean,
so I'm told.
You want to cut them across the grain, though, not against the grain.
Yeah, and I mean, it does depend on it. A flying fox, you could use Hanlon's razor, which really is what I think is happening here. Because I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to argue that this thing. I mean, of course. So I think at this point in this stage of the game, the official narrative is it came. I've heard a couple things. I've heard that it went into that market before it came out of that market. So kind of draw your own conclusions there. Uh, yeah, and chicken crossing eggs to murder humanity type of thing. But I mean, if I had a nickel, that old trope, that's right up there with the hero's journey. It's the murderous chicken. Um, but when we see diseases like this, like everybody's grabbing at straws, and I think that's part of the reason why I always kind of lean toward conspiracy on a lot of stuff, because I think it just gives me some semblance of, I don't know, some warm fuzzy feeling to think, okay, god damn it, at least somebody knows what the fuck is going on. At least somebody is pulling strings, as opposed to just we're a bunch of idiots, we're a bunch of monkeys on a rock zooming through the cosmos. But there's this, the latest thing that I heard was I'm gonna butcher this, whatever the fuck the name of this monster is. Pangolins.
Mangala-y.
They're yeah, it definitely harkens back to that. Now I want you and the four listeners we're going to have on this to kind of conceptualize in your mind what it would look like if a wallaby, an armadillo, and a raccoon had a wild night in Tijuana. Everybody woke up the next day, couldn't make eye contact, kind of fucked off and continued living their lives. 9 months later, wallaby goes into labor. And this is the thing that it shits out. This pangolin is a fucking monster in objectively kind of a cute way. It literally looks like a snake raccoon. That's probably the only way I could describe it. And here's the official. I'm gonna speak to the Prophet Wiki here. Pangolins, or scaly anteaters, are mammals of, can't pronounce that word. Wow. It's Polodia, Greek word meaning horny scale. Back to Tijuana. Yeah, take a look at these things, because I've never seen anything like it. Like if I didn't know they roll into a ball and then they roll like Sonic the Hedgehog, yes, this thing looks like a petri dish. And that's also how SARS started, was something similar. If and don't quote me, but it might have been the same animal. They're endangered because they keep
I don't know.
unprotected
I'm not sure if
sex
it's
in Tijuana.
just because there's
Buggers.
not enough donkey. Yeah.
It's a logistical nightmare to get there from China too. That's a good point. But that's how the SARS epidemic happened. Like, this guy's out there plowing his fields. One of these things kind of walks by, gives him a dirty look, and all of a sudden, thousands of people die. But yeah, so when you look at kind of what do we know, right? So I mean, that's conjecture, but what do we know? We know that this thing originated in Wuhan, right? And that's pretty much the accepted narrative. And I'm going to use that term a lot, accepted narrative, because I firmly believe nobody knows what the fuck is going on. And what does Wuhan happen to have? Well, it has a couple things. It has a TGI Fridays, which is actually a really good one. Their bat wings are fantastic, and it also has a level 4 virus containment center research lab, I guess. Biosafety level 4, which is like the highest. I don't know, like, think of that gas from The Rock, right? Sean Connery, Nick Cage. Wherever the fuck they kept that stuff, that's the level that they have.
The Rock? I did
What do you know
enjoy
about that
that.
one,
I
Josh?
prefer the WWE version of The Rock. It is.
The eyebrow is pretty charming.
Yeah, I've done some reading around that, and it's kind of a tough. It's tough to see because you do see a lot of stories, even from the New York Post, about China not maybe being on the up and up, right, of where this came from. To your point, because it has to have a level 4 microbiology lab that is specifically designed to handle coronaviruses. So, could someone have accidentally, wandered out after a late night and just have to take a little bit of corona with them? Was there, an incident at the lab? I don't know that anyone has gone to the lab to kind of to see what's up. Would I want to go?
I don't know. Would you want to go?
I don't know. Yeah,
That
it
place
is. But the one
looks
thing
like
I read, I don't know if you've
city,
seen this,
man.
is that
Like it's
there are, rumors or facts, depending on who you're listening to, that some of the researchers there, rather than cremating the animals right after they've, some people will say tortured or experimented on them, to create, say, a virus like this, see how it reacts, see how long it takes for it to kill the host. Usually, you cremate those animals to ensure that, that nothing happens. It also ends up
a good way to
being
get rid of
kind of like Return of the Living Dead, if you've ever seen that 80s version of that, when they burned all the dead in the crematorium rain, whatever. But
Josh, let me ask you, what if I'm trying to run a level 4 biolab and I'm on a
that's
budget?
where it is.
How can I squeeze some extra money out of that?
I don't want to accuse the Chinese of doing anything underhanded. They may have
Allegedly.
got
Xi Jinping looking at you.
From, some bat wings. They're used for soup by taking those animals down to the old
Gross
market. That's what we say, 800 yards away, and offering them up as a delicacy. So the question would be: you've now just served people coronavirus infested soup, which adds an interesting flavor to it, but also has some pretty bad side effects beyond Montezuma's revenge.
I mean, I've heard of people making a good living stealing printer toner from the office and slinging that shit on the side. So don't knock the side hustle. And as funny of a notion as that is, I'm picturing some like researcher wearing a trench coat, like popped up collar, creeping down to the market, like opening the trench coat. You want to buy some pangos, man? I don't know why I'm doing a Cuban accent, but I'm going to continue to. Yeah, they're fresh, man. Well, that one looks like it's a little bit sick. I don't know if I want to buy.
Yeah,
he's dead, man. What does it matter to you? Put him on some soup.
One researcher, I don't know if it's from there. I want to say it was Beijing that had sold his monkeys to a live animal market, about $1 million.
Were these monkeys relegated to the past tense, or were they living monkeys?
On the live animal market. So what those people did with those monkeys, if it was an Indiana Jones monkey brain, it could have been that. People might take them home.
Some Temple of Doom shit, huh?
Fun pets that will eventually eat your face. Whatever it have to be. Never underestimate the ability to get a couple of bucks.
And again, I look at that as a notion. Like I said, that's fucking, the idea of that is hysterical to me. I would put that at a pretty far-fetched possibility. I mean, kind of looking at this objectively, like, I don't know, we like to think we're pretty smart. but we're not, and we fuck up constantly. So what's to say, oh, god damn it, on my first day, fuck it, I gotta scoop this up. Nobody can know this. And it's not like you have a lot of get out of jail free cards in China. To kind of roll it back a little bit, like, and I don't want this to sound just like bagging on Chinese. Like, I have the population over there has my deepest sympathies, right? Even looking at that market as it stands, they're used to eating weird shit. And obviously, this country runs on fucking cows. They're sacred in another country, right? So the hypocrisy of eating something that I find disgusting to somebody else that's delicious, I understand that. But from what I understand, they're used to eating anything they could get their hands on, because these guys are coming out of, the time of Mao, and, communism has not exactly been good to them. So any port in a storm type of situation, I think, is what they're after. But when you look at that whole area and the population as it stands, and back to even like I said, joking that you don't get a lot of out of get out of jail free cards there. Xi Jinping has laid out his plan for the Chinese people. It's pretty hardcore, and it states that, yeah, okay, your generation, yeah, you guys are gonna have to eat weird fucking armadillo raccoons, but your grandkids are gonna be doing great. And again, having never been there, but from what I understand, a lot of the population is like all in on this. Like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. So who knows?
No, and I think that's true. I mean, chances of it being an animal market issue is kind of low, but if you go back to the 2017 Nature.com story, which was originally looking at the lab, they were studying things such as a BSL-4, which is the contamination that they have there, which is filtering and treating water and waste before they even leave the lab. So it's designed to hold anything that could get out or in, sorry, not out, unless you were infected and walked out. I know one of the things that they were studying first, right, was
Clock.
a pathogen, I believe, that caused a Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. I think I got that right. Which is tick-borne, right? That affects a lot of animals in the northwest section of China. However, that particular pathogen can jump to people. So,
Well, and that's everything mutates and changes, and this, that, and that's kind of the whole point, like, of how viruses work. It's like they're starting from, evolutionarily speaking, scratch. And this works, and they don't. Again, like, looking at a virus, it's very odd, because if your sole purpose, and let's be real here, human sole purpose and every living thing's sole purpose, is to make more of that thing, right? But if you kill your host and your lethality is through the roof, is natural selection going to
and that
reward you?
kind of really
You
makes it
keep
tough
killing
to
your
run a plague
hosts,
ink.
Yeah,
I've beaten
I've got
it,
78%.
but
I
I've
think I've whacked
been
out.
a
78.
slow killer on that. Which at 3%
Slow play.
mortality on this particular virus, it's infecting more people than it's killing. It's taking its time. It's taking the lay of the land before killing anyone. So I think that would be a concern, right? It's not going to burn itself out quickly. It doesn't appear to. I know when we see like the deaths, right? China added 97 folks to the death toll. I think, if you could correct me if I'm wrong on that, I think when they added 23,000 confirmed cases as of technically yesterday, probably about 10 o'clock Eastern, which would be the 22nd of February for those listening. It's not burning through the population. So
that we know of. But again, you look at Twitter, there's videos, not just one, multiple videos of like guys in hazmat suits and SKS is strolling down the street, right? And you got to remember the population of Wuhan is 11 million people.
Absolutely.
That's a fuck ton of people. And that's, I think, a big thing when we look at, I was chatting with somebody like, why are all these things always starting in China? Population density. Air
Well,
quality is
just to
probably
throw
playing a part in the lethality of it.
what about Patrick? What about India? They don't start in India, and you have like Delhi that's got a population of what? Yeah, a lot, and you're talking about probably far more unsanitary than China. New Delhi's got 22 million people as of 2011.
Well, see, again, I think playing population density on it is a big part of it. But when you look at India, I think the reason you don't see as much of that there, you see, what do you see a lot of in India? Cholera, bacterial infections, right? Viruses don't do too well in the heat, right? China, it's winter there. All these things always start in the winter, like it's cold. So as far as a point of origin goes, I mean, if this thing got into India and it could just light the whole town on fire, who knows? But I think temperature has a lot to do with it because we have a cold and flu season because viruses don't like heat, hence burning of the monkey, right? As opposed to selling of the monkey to be spoiled.
That's too long.
30 minutes at 425, I think. Yeah, I mean, the trick is you want to really singe it on the outside, right? Get all that bacterial shit, viral shit cooking. But back to the bioweapon thing. You said something that kind of caught me. So for us to sit here, I love how high and mighty Americans get. Like, I always make a point to try to point out my own hypocrisies, of which there are many. But for us to sit here and think that, goddamn Chinese and their fucking bioweapon, no. We're doing the exact same thing, and I would have a hard time believing otherwise, even if it's done under the guise of, well, they're doing it, we gotta have ours. So that's going on in the States for sure. Where it's also going on, though, Josh, Canada. That's right, our friendly neighbors to the north, America's hat,
the home of
making
poutine,
some viruses.
I don't think there's anything better. Oh, it's great.
I don't know what
French
that is. I think
fries covered in gravy with cheese curds.
Well, yeah, clearly you've
Not
never
in Canada.
tried pan-seared monkey, okay?
No.
Fucking Canadians. So, I want to talk about something in Canada. So it's
They could pay for healthcare.
a little interesting.
For everyone?
There is just so yeah. Well, and they can also make viruses there. And then if you get sick with the virus there, you can go to the doctor and they don't charge you for it, right? Maybe this whole thing is a whole big attack against single payer healthcare, which is a good idea. Well, you see, everybody got coronavirus, huh? You couldn't choose your doctor,
Maybe.
so you died. Maybe. There was a lab up there, though. And this, again, looking at conspiracies and kind of how everything works, I get it, but there's a lot of stuff here that kind of really, when you start adding it up, doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm looking at the name of it now. So there was a lab, a level 4 containment lab in Canada, and this guy, Frank Plummer, probably the worst
This is a national
microbiologist name I've ever heard.
Natural Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, right?
Exactly. And so they worked with the H1N1 pandemic, SARS, all that. Did a lot with Ebola, a lot of stuff out of that lab, and kind of got into a bit of hot water recently, didn't it? I think it was August. So it turns out that they were working with, let's see, Scandal. How do I spell that? Don't give me, poor man. I miss the days when you could Google something and not have to worry about your spelling and Chinese virus. Here it is. So this is as of July 2019. A rare event occurred in Canada. They cursed at
I said
somebody.
sorry right after.
So, yep, they immediately apologized, offered them their complimentary bottle of maple syrup, and sent them on their way. Okay, July 2019, a rare event occurred in Canada. Suspected of espionage for China, a group of Chinese virologists were forcibly evicted from the Canadian National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, where they had been running parts of a special pathogen program of Canada's Public Health Agency. One of the procedures conducted by the team was the infection of monkeys with the most lethal viruses found on Earth. 4 months prior to the Chinese team's eviction, a shipment containing two exceptionally virulent viruses, Ebola, and I can't even pronounce the second one, was sent from the NML to China, where the shipment was traced. It was held to be improper and a quote possible policy breach. I got to get with Carl in the rules because I don't know if sending level 4 containment viruses to another country is against the rules. I got to check. What the ever loving fuck is that?
That would be interesting. And if I recall correctly for that one, that was a doctor, her husband, and I don't think they said, but a number of students, which also had to be from China.
And it also happened to be one of them was lieutenant
They're
in the
deliberating
PLA. That's the People's Liberation
Canada
Army
from the grips of
of
the
China.
monarchy.
Well, or liberate them from the mortal coil as they unleash a virus set to set the world on fire. Who knows? But anyways, this guy, Frank Plummer, ran that lab, mind you, right? Very illustrious career, and unfortunately, as of February 4th, he died suddenly
What would you expect would
in
go wrong
Kenya.
in Kenya, besides lion attacks, hyena attacks, stomped to death by a elephant?
I mean, stray AK round. These things happen. I don't know. I look at this guy and like, okay, that's weird, right? We've got this massive outbreak in Wuhan, which is where they were sending those viruses to from Canada to Wuhan. This guy, Frank Plummer, who was the head of that lab during the time that this happened, dies suddenly in Kenya. Now, in all fairness, this guy's 67 years old and a complete booze bag, right? He's such an alcoholic that he decides to be the first fucking person to go through a brain implant, not making that up, to end his alcoholism.
Which
Deep
sounds
brain stimulation.
horrible because it sounds like someone's sticking their finger directly into your brain, just kind of like,
Yeah.
giving it the come hither.
Right. I mean, I've seen Johnny Mnemonic like 19 times, so I think it's something along those lines. But yeah, according to his own Wikipedia page, Dr. Plummer was working to develop an HIV vaccine at the time of his death and was believed to be the first recipient in North America to receive DBS, deep brain stimulation, to treat alcohol
So
use disorder in an experimental trial. Now, my brain instantly says,
you exploded it.
oh, you put this chip in his head. And
But I will say, though, my understanding
Running
is
Man,
the last couple
come
of days
on.
of his life, he was meeting with sex workers in Kenya. Is there a possibility that he went either a little David Carradine, perhaps a little NXS, and things just got a little out of hand.
He was meeting with sex workers because he was an HIV expert. And if there's one place you're pretty much guaranteed to
No,
find
I,
some
I would
HIV,
agree.
it's a sex worker in Kenya.
I just don't think we've seen anything of just how he died. It's just been he died a happy man, which, if you are a fan of autoerotic asphyxiation or just regular asphyxiation, you're probably enjoying yourself while you're being perhaps murdered by untoward forces.
I look at it all, and it says here, on the BBC.com,
I'm not trying to cast aspersions about this person. I'm not saying he enjoyed
quote, scientific
being strangled,
maverick.
but he might have been exploded. I don't want to sully the man's reputation. HIV said.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at his picture. I'm perfectly fine with it. Whatever great things this man did for humanity, he looks like a jagoff. And the fact that I maybe 3% sure he was a part of this is enough for me to completely trash this man. Okay. Having never met him, mind you. But it says right here, he was a scientific maverick whose research had a profound impact on global health. Also recognized for the leadership roles in the SARS, H1N1 flu, and Ebola pandemics. He had recently spoken publicly about undergoing experimental brain surgery to treat alcoholism. The researcher died while in Kenya to celebrate the 40th anniversary of research collaboration between University of Manitoba and University of Nairobi, reportedly
a heart attack is an easy thing to have happen unintentionally.
I don't know, man. Look at this guy, Josh. He looks like the guy that the Bond villain gets to make the virus.
I would be curious. I mean, from I wonder, did he have anything to do with it versus he's didn't do any background checks on these Chinese researchers that came over, right? Because that's a possibility, right? Don't do enough background to know that someone coming over happens to be in the PLA. You have China with a growing interest in bioscience, right? They seem to be okay with gene editing babies. Eugenics seems to be a-okay right now there. Is it a possibility that, he was just the guy that didn't do enough to check stuff and he just happens to be being thrown into it?
Well, I mean, again, but see, China has really infiltrated, and this isn't crazy conspiracy. Like, this shit is pretty well known. They've infiltrated a lot of shit. I mean, again, there's this lab where the fucking goddamn PLA lieutenants are, walking out of there with vials full of bleed from your eyeballs disease. But even take, Harvard, the most iconic American institution,
greatest minds,
where our greatest minds go.
A little bit of column A, a lot of column
A little bit of column A. A little bit of column B.
We'll let folks decide which column A is.
Charles Lieber, and I might be mispronouncing that last name, but fuck this guy. Are you familiar with him? Here's a fun fact. Charles Lieber, he was the chief nanoscientist for Harvard, right? Now, that's got to be a pretty tough gig to get. I can only imagine that's hard to get. Pioneer in the field of nanoscience and nanotechnology, right? This guy was just arrested for working with the Chinese in Wuhan. And if you look at this guy, he also looks like the guy that Von Balen gets to make the virus. And this shit just happened on the 28th. I want to say the 28th
Was
of
he a porcelain
January.
club member by chance?
I believe he was. Well, I know he's masturbated in at least
Before
2
or
glass
after the
coffins.
virus was released?
Well, once before to prove he was down,
Well,
and then the other time was just kind of a
curious
celebratory
if he was
jerk.
part of any secret societies,
I don't doubt it, man. You look at the Porcelain Club, the Skull and Bones. Like we're going balls deep on those. That's just. I mean, come on. Anybody, no matter how straight laced, non conspiratorially minded you think somebody is, if you lay out what the fuck that is, you're like, huh, oh, okay, that's a bit weird. But yeah, so let's see here. The DOJ in January. No, where is it? On January 28th, 2020, Lieber was charged with 2 federal counts of making materially false, fictitious, fraudulent statements about his links to a Chinese university in Wuhan. According to the Department of Justice charging document, there are 2 counts of an alleged crime committed by Lieber. First, during an interview by the DOD in April 2019, legal shit, Lieber said that he, quote, he was never asked to participate in the Thousand Talents program. And the Thousand Talents program is state sponsored by China to basically infiltrate all our universities across the world effectively. And they what they do, because it's a smart play too. These guys don't get paid shit, right? Based on what they do, So all of a sudden, China's got some deep ass pockets, and they come along and they're like, "Hey, yeah, well, we're going to give $100,000 and X, Y, and Z," and they buy their way in. So I'd encourage all the listeners out there, like, just read about the Thousand Talents program. It's pretty crazy shit, and then that's part of me. Like, when I look at what China's play has been, I'm like, oh god damn, you gotta respect that. Like, that's some devious Bond villain shit.
Is odd. That was a hard one to wrap your mind around.
And all this stuff happening within within what 2 weeks on either side of this thing breaking out of there. So I mean, how much of a stretch is it to think that? Okay, I mean, if I had to really kind of break it down, they were working on something in Wuhan. Somebody, because a bioweapon, like, you can't drop a nuke on somebody anymore.
They dropped a couple.
Forget about that,
Civilization, actually, I should say.
Yeah, well,
I can't help but go down that tree of evolution. It just goes faster.
Yeah, but you see, you did that when you were the only one with nukes. Everybody's got nukes now, so we're not dropping nukes. But not to mention, okay, say you want to drop a nuke on Seattle. It's a lovely city.
It looks very pretty, but having
for the nuke,
the people could stand to be nuked.
Well, they weren't.
At
they
least
were better than the 80s. I will say that. Yeah, the whole thing was kind of downhill from there, man. He just died. Yesterday was either the 15th anniversure of his death,
and that will be another episode.
No, I think it would have been his birthday. It would have been 54 yesterday.
Did Courtney do it? Probably. We'll get into that.
I don't know. Have you?
Oh yeah.
You've listened to Courtney Love and like seen her, right? I don't think
it's not a bad
a mouthful of shotgun is a bad alternative.
And then also, we can get into it later. I think it's a whole conversation. That's a whole another hour and a half of craziness around that.
Yeah, well, a lot of money. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of reasons. But
what I maybe be willing to do to keep some of that money and keep those checks coming in. did Yoko hire out Lenin's death? Maybe. She did repeatedly. That did
she could have just sang for him.
A gun and a couple bullets.
Probably. She's like, I don't get it. I've sang 9 hours. He listened to me.
I don't know.
He's still alive. I don't get it. Because the man was a treasure. That's why. Okay, could be foiled by you. You needed a fat guy with little pervert glasses and a revolver, allegedly. I don't know. If you look at the whole thing, though, like it just seems to me that so if you are going to make a bioweapon, right? Well, you got to have a vaccine, and not get your own crowd. But the way you have to get that is first off, you got to make the virus, then you got to reverse engineer it for the vaccine.
Maybe you are more concerned with trying to get it up and running to perhaps, you have a little bit of an issue in Hong Kong. You got a lot of people kind of giving you the finger that don't want to necessarily be part of China. You have.
You used to be able to just cut those fingers off.
Probably are kind of giving the old thumbs up back to British colonial rule, which I don't think if we were to go and ask India, hey, do you want the British back? I don't know if the answer would be yes.
You see, it probably would be based on if it could be today. Now, don't get me wrong. What the British Empire did to India, whoo! Read some books on that.
True.
That's some pretty horrible shit. But if you could have today's standard of Britain, maybe. I don't know. It's like I think that's just part of the human animal. Like we're always just trying to set up these apartheid states, no matter where we go and what we do.
I don't think Australia wants to go back. I mean,
I
don't think Britain wants them back. Who sent them to Australia in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, that the whole Australian accent is effectively like America's Southern accents. If you look at this particular case with Hong Kong, I mean, for God's sakes, like
the protests in Hong Kong.
Well, this has stolen everyone's eyeballs. But what's weird though is like the Hong Kong protests. Like, I think a lot of people really, taking it even a step deeper, a lot of people are just now learning about like, how much Chinese dick American companies are sucking. And I mean that literally and figuratively. Like they will bend over backwards for them. Look at the NBA with the whole Hong Kong protest, right? Right now, the NBA has the fucking stones to go out there and talk about socially consciousness and all that, but yet you completely condone what China's doing over there. It's like Nike when you come out like with the Colin Kaepernick ad. Now, whatever side of the fence somebody falls on Colin Kaepernick, I think we can all agree that when a company comes out with an ad of his face, one of the most polarizing figures we've seen in the last 5 years, stand for something or stand nothing at all, right? And then their sales skyrocket, so they have to hire more 6-year-olds to make their shoes. It's a bit hypocritical.
That would be the question, right? Is right now we're seeing the stock market drop, which is a good buying opportunity as well. Well, I mean,
it's not dropping.
Today dropped.
It's really not.
Again, as of the 22nd, for those who are listening, 2020, 227 points today. The Dow Jones. It's a great buying opportunity, especially if you're looking at companies that rely on China, the Apples of the world. Well, that's true. I mean, if you go on
everything's
Amazon,
of the world.
I would challenge you to find anything that is made in the U.S. Or anything that is not made in China. Very, very few things, right? So if you
We'll get this. No, sorry to cut you up, but you got me thinking about markets, and I did some research on this about 2 weeks ago. This is as of the 12th of February. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read down some statistics here. This is how the market reacted to other epidemics. Pandemic. I think we should qualify that. A little late, but hey, epidemic, one country, one continent, or one continent.
it's a
Pandemic,
little
oh, more than one.
elastic of a definition.
So far as I
We'll
understand.
go with it. That's fine.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit of an idiot, so that'll work. But if you take the market, so take SARS. This happened from there were 38 trading days when the SARS virus dropped. This is based purely on the S&P 500, but it dropped 12.8%. Avian flu, 141 trading days, dropped by 6.9%. MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, 43 days of trading, dropped by 7.3%. Ebola, 23 days of trading, 5.8%. Zika virus, 66 days of trading, dropped by 12.9%. And coronavirus, as of the 12th of February, the market was up 1.4%. Now, I think that's since leveled off, but then you also look at what the Central Bank of China has been doing. They pumped in like $500 billion into that economy. That's a pretty big prop. Well, looking at the markets, like it's funny. They always want to say, like the stock market is the biggest indicator of the health of our economy and X, Y, and Z. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a big pile of dead monkeys for sale. Like that's kind of a bullshit thing because the stock market's at 29,000. Okay, do you know anybody that's making a ton of money on it? I don't. But
not personally, but I know of people.
Yeah. The Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. I'm sure he's doing well, but
I started. You have advanced knowledge of what's happening. Sure.
Getting tomorrow's newspaper today, man. It comes in handy. But I started doing some digging on this, and I wanted to see, like, because it just didn't make sense to me. Like, why is the fucking market going up? Why? I couldn't get my head around it. I mean, just from a supply chain standpoint alone, it should be going down. So I started tracking back, and what I found is this is, objectively speaking, this is a couple of weeks ago, but this is based on just the S&P 500. So it's let's see. Hold on.
So keep in mind the S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the U.S. So the big companies that may or may not have, well, probably all of them have, but some type of connection to China, whether it's supply chain. Well, it's all going to be supply chain, right? You can't get your $1 doodads without China being involved.
Well, it's your Cogswell cogs and your Spacely sprockets, and of all the countries in the world, none are more heavily dependent upon it than America. So much so to the tune of literally the 35% of all intermediate products come from China. Right. So that means I'm trying to build product X, but I need this part. This part comes from China. 35% of everything that this country makes requires a part from China in some way, shape, or form. Canada is next on the list at 20%. So China's pretty goddamn important. I mean, they make everything over there, including bioweapons. But so looking at the market and kind of what it did, so this is tracked back over the other pandemics and epidemics and coughing and sneezing, right? Take SARS. There were 38 trading days during SARS, and the S&P 500 dropped 12.8%. Bird flu, 141 trading days, it dropped 6.9%. The MERS, 43 trading days, it dropped 7.3%. Ebola, we had 23 trading days and it dropped 5.8%. Zika, trading for 66 days, and it dropped 12.9%. And now, obviously, there's a shit ton of other factors that play into it, but this is just kind of the basics of it. Take coronavirus. And when I looked this up, we've been trading for 17 days, and it was up 1.4%. Now, it's just started to go down a little bit, but you also look at the Chinese market, it was going up. And you find out that the Chinese central bank injected $500 billion in liquidity into that market. Now, that sounds like a pretty big-ass stopgap measure to me.
So you're going not from the first reported case, which is on New Year's Eve, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going from more of when it became...
Everybody knew about it. This was on the 12th of February. And now everybody knows about it now, and it's still, the Dow is still at like 29 grand or something like that.
I mean, as a data point, right? Apple, which I think we'd agree was being the most valuable company in the world, its stock price on the 31st, which is when the first reported case kind of came through, right? No big deal from the China perspective. This is
nothing to see here, folks.
Was $293.65 for one share. As of close of business on the 21st, which is Friday, is $313.05. If I were to go look at the 12th of February, it was at $327.20. So it's gone down. It's gone down $10, since that time.
Well, here's something that's a little bit weird. Take Amazon, right? So old Jeff Bezos, who I, for one, believe that he is a good and ethical man.
Have you seen that deep fake yet of the Cage from the original series Star Trek, where they deep faked him into the aliens that were keeping Captain Pike around, and they deep faked Elon Musk onto Captain Pike?
I don't know what any of that means, but I'm going to watch it.
No, you should watch it. You should watch it. Star Trek, deep fake, Jeff Bezos. See that, and then watch the original. And oddly enough, the faces aren't that different. So he fits in perfectly. So, I mean, if I were watching it, I'd be like, nah, it's just the original. I would not.
Well, if you were to buy Amazon, like, what do you think, just off the top of your head, what do you think Amazon's trading at right now?
About $2,000.
$2,000.
2,100.
2,100. That's remarkably close. I would imagine you have that on a screen in front of you. But if you don't, here's the weird part. Jeff Bezos just...
I don't. It's just where I sit around going, why didn't I buy Amazon early when I used to shop there for books and they only sold books? Much like my parents neglected the opportunities to buy Microsoft. If you grew up in Seattle, there are a lot of opportunities that people will come up to you and talk about, of stock options, opportunities to invest that they missed out on, and as of today, they'd be millionaires. And
yeah. Well, and to quote the wonderful Tia Carrera from Wayne's World, then if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass when he hopped. We've all heard the stories of the $1 million secretaries at Microsoft. Frankly, they can go fuck themselves. But specifically Jeff Bezos and Amazon, he just dumped $1.8 billion worth of stock, I believe.
Was that for the $120 million house in LA? Is it 120? Something like that? Something ridiculous?
Yeah, like 124, something like that. But no, I mean, at any rate, like, okay, it's a $124 million house. That's just... I'm going to say that again. It's a $124 million house. So that in and of itself is just so fucking crazy to me that exists. And
it's got a view, though.
Oh,
it's all about the view.
Yeah, location. Yeah, where's the location? It's its own state. So he sells off $1.84 billion worth of Amazon stock on February 6th. What's very odd to me, though, is if you look at this, Okay, and on the 8th.
So on the 6th, it was at $2,050.
Okay, so why don't you look at it on, how about January 30th?
On the 30th, it was, let's say 1,871, if we round up.
It jumps from 1870 on the 30th to 2041 on the 31st. That's a pretty big ass jump. Frankly, it's the biggest jump it's had in ever, so far as I can tell, from an idiot's perspective, just looking at the ticker. That's a big ass jump, and we know how important. I mean, who out there hasn't like had something show up at their house that you ordered 6 months ago and it shows up from China? You're like, oh fuck, I forgot I ordered that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the closest jump that I could see that's like within like that month would be December 5th at about 1751.
So yeah, he takes this big ass
December
jump.
2nd, which was about 1898, so about another, that kind of $200 a share jump, which is ridiculous.
So this thing kicks off on the what? It's been this thing has been burning for a month. Wuhan is already in lockdown mode. Like the stock market should have been taking an absolute beating and should be taking an absolute beating right now. Again, think 35% of all products made require an intermediate part from China.
Now, Occam's razor would say that you already had ships in the water, when it was discovered or when it was, kind of becoming an issue, and we're going, ew, China.
Well, those ships, it's a 3-week journey.
Right. So, I mean, you're probably talking any kind of supply chain hits would come, end of quarter one, beginning of quarter two, right? So the next quarter of business is going to be, knock on wood, horrific.
It's not going to be good. I mean, and look at like Foxconn, the company that, I don't know if the listeners out there have ever heard of the suicide nets they installed around the factories. Yeah, that was Foxconn. That's a company that makes the iPhone you're probably listening to. And the working conditions over there are so abysmal that people were flinging themselves off of the building to avoid it.
But to be fair, the coronavirus has now allowed them to have a nice little break from work.
That's a very good point. I think they're probably assembling the iPhone 12 at home.
That's true. Speaking of which, make sure you're on that iPhone upgrade plan. Nice to be able to get a new iPhone every year. Just don't think about what it takes to get that new iPhone every year from both personal debt and moral debt.
Hey, the cost of globalism is high. And just like that steak you probably ate this week, don't think about all the shit that went into that. Best not to think about it.
Hey, I know where my meat comes from. I happen to go and get grass-fed beef from a local farm.
Do you get to look it in the eye before it's murdered?
I look at their brothers and sisters who have seen the murder of their former...
Oh, they let the family watch. That's good.
Hey. But I would like to hoard or lord that over everyone. So
circle of life.
Grass-fed beef is great. I suggest everyone try some.
Well, me, I'm more of a fan of infected monkey steaks, but again, that's neither here nor there. Here's a fun fact. Medications. Something that nobody's really talking about, but Wuhan specifically creates 80% of America's medications. And everybody out there listening probably knows at least 5 or 10 fuckfaces that are slamming Paxil like it's their job. It's going to be pretty interesting. They say about 3 weeks from today, the 22nd of February, we're going to be in shortages. So if you are a fuckface taking Paxil, start breaking them in half would be my advice.
Or move to the generic, because those are probably made in India.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's like, say this thing doesn't murder everybody bleeding out of their eyes. Just the global economy and supply chain of everything and our way of life it's pretty big threat by this.
It is. So I would suggest do all your Amazon shopping now. Do any shopping that you need now. Things will start getting more expensive.
Well, and here's the thing. Kind of looking at this, not in the panic standpoint, but when this whole thing kicked off and I went into my little feverish panic about it, I'm like, I need to get some masks. I'll get some masks. That'll make me feel better. I can just shoot down to Home Depot. Huh. Go to Home Depot, giant hole where the masks are. Now, keep in mind, this is about a month ago.
And keep in mind that Home Depot's masks are really for painting, not so much.
Oh no, the N95s.
The end of the world.
No, that's where you go. You don't go to Walgreens. The N95s are at Home Depot, I assure you. But I go to the next Home Depot. Big fucking hole there. I went to Walmart. Big fucking hole there. I get to the third Home Depot and they have a sign up limit 10 per customer.
So you're saying that Home Depot is the preppers haven? I always thought that was Cabela's.
Well, that's a very fair point. But like I said, have you seen the price of a shotgun?
I have seen a mask. I'm just saying that in my head, when I think about end of the world, I need to defend my house. I don't think Home Depot. I think of camping supplies and shotguns and MREs and such. I think Cabela's. We're not sponsored by Cabela's yet, but however, if they're listening.
Well, I'm more of a Bass Pro Shop, my guy. But hey,
luckily, Bass Pro Shop bought Cabela's, so really kind of the same company.
Price of globalism is high.
That's true.
No, I mean, again, like this shit's flying off the shelf, and somebody out there is paying it. Now, I don't know. Not speaking of masks, like, are they being all sent back to China? There's massive shortages everywhere, and it's only gotten worse since then. Because again, most of the shit is made in China. So.
And I've read that a lot of them have been sent.
Oh, yeah.
To San Francisco, Vancouver, areas with large Chinese populations, where folks could have come in. I mean, they can't come in now because we've canceled all the flights, but that's what I've heard. You have things that have been canceled, all kinds of trade shows.
But again, nothing to see here. It's just the flu. It's just if the flu's worse. But okay, you canceled the largest smartphone convention. You canceled Facebook's convention in San Francisco.
Which isn't a bad thing. You don't need Facebook out there doing anything.
Yeah, but if we could get all of them sick at the same time, let's do it.
That's true, but I don't think Zuckerberg's going to be there. I think he's too busy charging up his batteries before his next congressional interview.
Eerily sipping water out of a cup, feigning human emotion.
Yes.
Yeah, but if you look, well, hold on. This is a weird part, right? So all this shit's getting canceled, and it's all the whole flu. It's just the flu. There's nothing to see here. Blah 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 blah. Right? But all this shit's getting canceled, and if you look at how this thing spreads and just the bases around it, I mean, I've heard it can live to the ripe old age of 27 years on the surface in the right temperature. You could be asymptomatic for 9 years and still spread it. Like,
yep.
Just the amount of, I don't know, is it nefarious or is it just incompetence as to how the fuck this thing is spread everywhere? Cases are jumping up all over the place. Look at those poor bastards on the cruise ship.
So you're saying Lysol isn't enough?
Only if you drink it.
It also was a former usage was as a douche, which is a horrific story if you go and look at the burning. I have seen a lot of cancellations. As a pro wrestling fan, and fight fan, there's a lot of empty arena matches, fights, MMA, pro wrestling, whatever, happening in Japan. Honestly, they're more courteous and will wear a mask. I was actually just there right when I left, actually right before coronavirus was kind of a big thing. Thank my lucky stars that we happened to leave before it started really spreading. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of cancellations of even things I think even in around San Francisco. that have been canceled just because of not wanting to have large groups of people gathered, which I don't know could be considered to be going back to the racistness of there might be Chinese people there. We don't want to be around them.
Well, and just again exposing my own hypocrisy, when I was in full fever pitch on this thing, I went to I was at Walmart, I believe, trying to pick up apocalypse supplies, and I saw an old Asian woman in a wheelchair being pushed by what I can only presume is her son, younger Asian man. She was wearing a mask, and my initial reaction was, "Oh God, I'm fucking dead." It took about a quarter second, and I came to my senses, understanding that, well, in most Asian cultures, it's actually polite if you are sick to have a mask on so you don't fucking infect everybody. But in the
Absolutely.
States, you put a mask. If people are getting beat up for this.
I
Wearing
agree.
a mask.
Like I said, I was in Japan a month ago. Anyone who had even the slightest cough was wearing a mask out of courtesy and respect for the people that are around him.
Well, and that's why we're doing this remote, because you were just in Japan a month ago, and I can't be too careful.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not dead yet. I haven't started coughing or having any kind of adverse effects.
Oh, I went through a month of, about a month now, where every cough I hear, it's like, oh God, it's coming. Like, genuinely, this thing sucks. It is terrifying.
It is terrifying. Which is kind of where I'm kind of curious about where did it come from, the vectors that it has. I still from my conspiracy brain just still kind of look at, okay, it seems to affect Asians more than white or black people. Is that because, they're eating a different type of bat there than we eat over here? Or is it because there's something nefarious, right? China has a lot of issues with all those countries that, I feel rightfully so, have some issues with what China claims as their property.
Well,
they have a lot of anger towards Japan, rightfully so. There's Korea, which is a competitor in multiple ways. There's Hong Kong, which we've talked about, right? Taiwan, we pretty much fuck Taiwan. You're ours. Could you have a bioweapon that is designed to perhaps be a weapon towards these countries? Not necessarily today, but at a later date. You have to look at why did the administration, the State Department, override the CDC's?
Well, and that's the big thing. Take that right there. Okay, the CDCs. These are our best eggheads. We've collected them all, and we've put them in the place. And their job is to make us not die. They're, again, the smartest people we have in the fields of epidemiology, biology, zoology, X, Y, and Z. Smartest people we got. We should probably listen to them. No, fuck that. They don't know what they're talking about.
And we chose not to. We brought back folks from the U.S. that were on the Diamond Princess in Japan, supposedly quarantined, the sick versus the non-confirmed, I should say confirmed versus non-confirmed cases. We haven't had anyone die yet, but one would have to think, why would you go against the CDC's warning if you're the State Department? Are you curious about this disease? Do you want to harvest this disease? Do you want to investigate this disease?
Well, it's not even that. Like, think about it, man. I grew up in the 80s. Like, when I took a flight, there was a 50-50 shot I'd have an open seat next to me. There was about 30% chance I'd get the whole fucking row. Now, you can't even get a seat next to you on a goddamn Corona flight. Like, I just put healthy people in there, too.
Yep. I mean, if you think about it, so the reason why I get kind of curious, right, is the U.S. has had 35 confirmed cases, right? 0 deaths, which is good, right? We don't want anyone to die. Iran, 28 cases, 5 deaths.
Well, and what
South
about
Korea, 556 cases, 4
Italy?
deaths.
They're about to blow up.
Yeah, I've seen some Twitter stuff about like lockdowns, but I haven't been able to confirm that from any kind of, depending on how you consider it to be a reputable source. A reputable source that said that they've gone into a lockdown. I think Italy's 79 cases, 2 deaths, but we don't know who and what those folks are. Are they Asians that happen to be in Italy? Are they Italians that are actually infected and have died?
Are they Italians that are really good at math? I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Maybe it's an egghead disease, which if so, I'm glad that by memorizing lines from The Simpsons, lines from other TV shows, that I've forgotten everything I learned in high school algebra. I feel like I'm safe.
Yep.
I worry for my daughter, who is, still in school, so she's learning math.
Doomed. Doomed.
She's probably screwed. I know. Doomed. Yep. Just doomed. So
I don't know. I mean, now think about this too, though. If you look at like this, could this just be the ultimate distraction? Because again, a lot of people were just woken up. Shit, myself included. I had no idea how absolutely gangster China was getting down. And they put in Winnie the Flu, Xi Jinping. He gets in there, and he's appointed for lifetime presidency. Putin, effectively lifetime president. So what I always viewed as not necessarily our enemies, but our biggest competition being Russia and China, they can all of a sudden play the long game. Whereas any American, what do you have, 8 years maximum as your administration? And the first 4 you spend sucking dick trying to get elected for the next 4. And then maybe you could do some policy. And then you're 2 years into your second term and fuck, I don't know. Anybody out there ever put in 2 weeks on a job? You don't really give a shit. But all of a sudden, everybody's getting like the whole Hong Kong thing really brought a lot of attention. We're finding out that, just how much these American companies will bend over backwards for that sweet, sweet China money. How many movies, for God's sakes? Just the other day, I was watching Abominable with my kids, and I'm like, "Oh, this is about China, huh?" But there's gonna be a lot of propaganda in there. And sure enough, Abominable, DreamWorks caught a ton of shit because of the 9 dash line. It puts on a big map, and it's effectively this map that shows, oh, this is all China, when it's not, and it was banned in a bunch of countries. Top Gun Part 2, the original jacket had I don't know, what was it, the some flag that China didn't like, and they took it out. Like, they will reshoot movies. They will shoot 45 Iron Man, 25 minutes of extra footage just to get into China. So maybe
Transformers.
Yeah, maybe this thing is just like, fuck, panic button. We're just gonna do this now because shit got too hot. We're gonna create this massive diversion. We're gonna take back Hong Kong. We're gonna sweep and clear type of thing.
And to be fair, I mean, I think with social media, we've seen the Chinese actors, right, in Hong Kong as protesters, as pro some of these laws that China was really backing. You've seen a lot of iffy things coming out of Hong Kong that I mean, I don't know conspiracy wise if you think it's China's doing or China's behind it, but
you mean that rash of suicides that happened, and all those protesters got really sad.
All those suicides that happened to be, hey, he shot himself in the back of the head.
Well, and how have we gotten this far into this and not even mentioned the whistleblowing doctor? This poor bastard, he tries to warn the world about this. Oh my God, we've got some serious shit going on here. This is really bad. The Communist Party did not like that. They shut that shit down real quick.
Now, to be correct, terminology wise at least, it's the People's Democratic Republic of China.
That's right. That's fair. That's very fair.
I don't know how you have a democratic republic because those are two separate things, but it sounds nice.
Well, and the deaths of the senior staff there. So there's this whistleblowing doctor, 34 years old. He dies. Um, just last week, the hospital director of Wuhan dies of coronavirus. Like, this thing is no fucking joke. But then you also see him putting together these, and I started getting, again, really worried reading in between the lines. I'm like, just the flu, but they're building these hospitals that have 30,000 beds. They're building them in a week. Never seen that for the flu. They're building 9 more of these things. Like, I don't think this thing is anywhere near done.
You're talking about
The virus,
the 10-day hospitals that they're managed to build.
Mm-hmm. Like, okay, here's listen to this. This is as of 16 hours ago today, February 22nd. Again, New York Post. Don't buy China's story. The coronavirus may have leaked from a lab. At an emergency meeting in Beijing held last Friday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping spoke about the need to contain the coronavirus and set up a system to prevent similar epidemics in the future. A national system to control biosecurity risks must be put in place, quote, to protect the people's health, Xi said, because lab safety is, quote, national security. Xi did not actually admit the coronavirus Xi didn't actually admit the coronavirus is now devastating large swaths of China had escaped from one of the country's bioresearch labs, but the very next day, evidence emerged suggesting this is exactly what happened. Ministry of Science and Technology released a new directive entitled Instructions on Strengthening Biosecurity Management in Microbiology Labs that Handle Advanced Viruses like Novel Coronavirus. Read that again. It sure sounds like China has a problem keeping dangerous pathogens in test tubes where they belong. I don't even think they belong in test tubes, but that's just me. Wow. Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I'm pretty well convinced this fucking thing was goddamn man-made. Well, and before I pack it in on this inaugural podcast, I went through and just ran a quick Google search, right? Sitting here February 22nd. Talked a lot of crazy shit.
Is that the don't
but
listen
again,
to China?
Just Googled it. Top story that came up is from the New York Post, which is a decent source, right?
But to be fair,
title of the article.
The New York Post is a interesting.
Don't
paper.
buy China's story. The coronavirus may have leaked from a lab. Here's the article.
It is. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying it's an interesting paper.
Well, sure. I mean, but it's somewhat reputable, right? I mean, you got U.S. You got Tom Cotton, a U.S. senator from Arkansas, who's shouting this thing was a bioweapon. And this article, here's what it says. It says that an emergency meeting held in Beijing last Friday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping spoke about the need to contain the coronavirus and set up a system to prevent similar epidemics in the future. A national security control biosecurity risks must be put in place to, quote, protect the people's health, Xi said, because lab safety is, quote, a national security. Xi didn't actually admit the coronavirus devastating large swaths of China had escaped from one of the country's bioresearch labs, but the very next day evidence emerged suggesting this is exactly what happened as the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology released a new directive entitled Instructions on Strengthening Biosecurity Management in Microbiology Labs that Handle Advanced Viruses like the novel coronavirus.
I think
it's a pretty wordy title.
That's where I go back to. It sounds like someone tripped over the power cord, whatever that equivalent is in a bioresearch lab. And, and shit got out. I mean, I think I just saw today that as of 9 a.m., Israeli time.
Tripped over a dead monkey. And
180 students were in isolation after being exposed to some South Korean tourists, right? It's kind of starting to explode over in South Korea, and South Korea is Asian country, right? I mean, that, supposedly, when I was in Japan, most of the people around me were Asian, which was a surprise for me.
Lots of Asians in Asian
US,
countries.
used to white people. But then again, Korea is very close to China, so it's kind of.
But what
Asian countries happen to be close to each other, so it may be nothing. We'd have to get a very big flashlight
and
to be able to shine the light on them.
here's the thing that's freaking me out. I mean, imagine those poor bastards in North Korea.
They're praying
What the
to
fuck's
dear
happening
leader
there?
right now.
Good God! I mean yeah. This whole thing just he's
So
probably.
what
I
you're saying
guarantee
then is
you.
about
I know one thing to be
2
as
weeks, Trump will
consistent as
say, "We have
gravity.
a vaccine and a
He
cure."
has announced that he has a vaccine and a cure. I guarantee it.
The best cure would be the.
It's going to be a great cure. I wish I could do a good Trump, but I can't. But it's going to be tremendous.
But I think from a
the best
conspiracy
cure you've ever
perspective, you
seen.
could say that
Yeah, all we
this
do is
virus
what
does not
it takes the cell
appear to
wall
be
and it builds up a
anything
bigger
from
wall.
let's mess with the elections in the U.S. type of perspective. It's too early for that.
No, I mean that's 48 dimension
Expert
chess
opinion
type of shit.
as a
Like,
podcast
in all reality, if
generalist.
if I was forced to give my my yeah as a jerk off sitting in my basement, yeah, I would say that this thing was a lab created
Do
virus
you think
based
so?
on how goddamn
But
contagious it is.
would you
It's
say
aerosolized,
that you believe that this
and they were
particular virus
halfway
was
through the
targeted
process.
towards
I mean, somebody dropped the beaker.
the Asian neighbors? You know,
I
but you
don't see that.
got San Francisco.
I think it's just a
here,
numbers game. I
right?
think
You
it's
got
just
Vancouver,
again
BC,
where
and
there are a lot of
large
Asians
Asian
in Asia.
populations.
Who's got this the most? I think if this thing broke out of
That's true. That's what I'm saying. It's like the coming back and forth. You would feel that set. So the point
and
I'm trying
again,
to
who
make is
travels
that
to
San
Asia?
Francisco,
Asians,
Vancouver,
and then they fly
Seattle
home.
have large Asian populations. I mean, the United States has only had 35 cases. And when did we stop plane flights from China? It was probably the beginning of February, right? So wouldn't you say that by the end of this month or early March would really kind of tell us what kind of the vector might be? Like if we stop those flights and we still kind of are tracking towards 35 cases, and in a month we're at 75 cases, but China and Korea and both Koreas are going, well, if you hear anything from North Korea, are going up. What does that mean? Does it mean that it's just not traveling well, or is it targeted? Yeah, South China Sea. You got.
I can't imagine
have
it being
a lot
targeted.
of.
The juice doesn't seem worth the squeeze to
if
me
you
at
were
that
to
point.
be China, you
I think
look
you
over at Japan.
blame
How
a
do you
lot
feel
of it.
about Japan? I'm not saying that this is something that they're planning to release today, but as a bioweapon, could it be something that you would sit there and go and you'd look at your immediate sphere of influence? Well,
that's
true. It depends on who you talk to.
they didn't call it the back rub of Nanking.
Not quite a rape.
I believed it was called the rape of
So
Nanking.
it's kind of a consent
They've got
thing
some
if you're
beef with
Japanese.
Japan.
Confusion, really.
Yeah, well, it was like
Depending how you feel about Japan, and how they view certain
So
things.
it's like
Perhaps.
you did it, and then she was totally down, but then the next day she felt bad about it and cried rape. Is that one of those things? Well, based on the books I've read
So
about
that's where
Imperial
I go
Japan,
back
which
to.
I can pluralize it because I have read two. Yeah, they did some pretty
No,
horrendous
I'm
shit
talking
in
the
Nanking.
Asian countries in general. Anyone who's got Taiwan, right?
But it wouldn't be for Japan. If
Taiwan
anything, Hong Kong. Sure, I
the
give you
Mongols
that.
are part of Japan
But
or China, so they're not really an issue. No,
those goddamn Mongolians.
we'll put air quotes around sovereign.
Mongolia. Mongolia. That's the no.
Sure.
They're sovereign.
You just have to wonder. I would just wonder because when I personally look at it,
They're nomadic horse
and I
archers.
go,
Leave them
okay,
be.
there are a lot of expatriates in all these countries. It seems to be Asian. It seems to be that the State Department, which, depending on how deep you want to get into the conspiracy of who really would like these people flown back if they are infected versus leaving them on the Diamond Princess, which was the cruise ship, right, where all the Japanese people, far more Japanese people were infected than the Americans on board. Why would we not want to bring them back and perhaps harvest the virus, study it, and look and see, and China see as our intellectual property, maybe we want to steal a little bit of theirs, which is a targeted bioweapon that we could then turn around and use against China in a future war if it ever happened. I mean, why would the State Department and Trump and everyone else override the CDC while still trying to cut their budget and do all that kind of good stuff if it wasn't important to get them back? That's true. It may not be this might be the deep state. This might be more of the CIA.
I think that's giving the administration a lot of credit. And I think they're just a bunch of fucking morons.
The folks that Trump has in those positions.
Well, I mean, and again, even just back to China as them creating the bioweapon, like they've laid out their plans. Like I said earlier, like that, Xi Jinping would whack half the population to get Hong Kong back, or even I've heard theories that it's only killing the older people. And think about it: how much would they save on medical costs if they could whack out everybody over the age of 60?
So that would somewhat counter that this is a bioweapon targeted towards Hong Kong, which most of the protesters are on the youngish side of life.
Well, but just like the whistleblowing doctor, I mean, he was the first one to present the symptoms of bullet holes to the forehead.
Seizing a wall hits you in the back of the head. What are you supposed to do? Except fall forward on your gun. Or just like that South Park episode,
you shoot again.
And scientist.
Yeah, you shoot again. You shoot yourself twice in the head, like some journalists do.
Himself after about 5 agonizing minutes of watching him shoot himself in the head. But
how
true? So, I mean, at this point,
yeah, but how eerily prophetic were they? Because California is pretty cool to the homeless. Well, I think we got to sort of unfurl. I think we, as doom and gloom as it does sound, I think humanity could very well be on the edge of a knife right now.
Based off what we know,
2 weeks is going to be very telling.
31st from the first report. Ooh, not a big deal. To today, where we're looking at second quarter impacts on the economies of the supply chain and everything else, I would say that I would lean towards a created weapon that may have come from Canada that had someone that tripped over the power cord. It got out. We had a doctor that tried to kind of sound the alarm. China being a democratic republic chose, they voted and they decided, 2 slugs to the back of the head is the best way to, deal with this.
They all got together and they voted and they turned out.
He could be. I just don't think that this particular.
What about the other doctor that just died?
Accident.
Was he getting a little too sass with the mouth?
I would agree. I think
no. I mean, I think it's. I don't think it's an accident that it
supposed
exists.
To stay
I think it's an accident.
This level 4 containment that has all this filtered water and stuff, but yet suffered from a case of dumbassitis. That's true. Next thing we know, we'll have dinosaurs trying to eat our skulls.
Yeah, life finds a way. It does.
That's true.
Me and some of the velociraptors have constructed a crude land bridge to take us over to Venezuela. These things happen, man, and it's just like
that's true.
The fact that we're even here having this conversation and we haven't blown up the planet with nukes yet is
which we didn't really
baffling.
Cover that much.
We've given the human history,
which
so
we could take about
it's just a matter of time.
Is this a plan by the elite, the Illuminati, to perhaps shave a little bit of the population off? Right? You have someone like Trump who is perhaps being controlled by various videotapes, various other means of control, eliminating or reducing budgets on national health, right, including the CDC, the DHS, NSC. The Complex Crisis Fund was eliminated, and that was only $30 million when you compare it to what we pay for one jet in the Navy, right? Funding some of these responses to these type of issues. I mean, you have to wonder, why would you cut from these programs that are designed to help us? Maybe, some people might want some people to die.
I mean, I think that's as simple as greed. I mean, imagine tomorrow if we stop the military spending. We have a $758 billion annual
ROI, though.
military budget. And when $20 billion would end homelessness and well, and that's it. I don't so far as Trump's being controlled by videotapes or P tapes and German Scheisse films, I don't buy any of that. I think he's a fucking muppet, and I think he's got the biggest case of megalomania we've ever seen. He's a violent narcissist.
But you could think that, or
I think they're just.
The other thought is that
I don't know. The end is nigh. Let's just rob the store, get into our bunkers.
As part of the Michael Bloomberg's and $60 billion of cash. What happens when the supply chain goes down? If you're a company that relies on China, right? Well, pretty much anywhere in Asia, right, where they have children working to build us stuff. That stock price drops. I can buy that Apple at a discount. I can buy Comcast at a discount. I can buy, maybe not so much Amazon. I think Amazon, is well insulated from that in some ways. You have the Samsungs that are in Korea, that need parts both from Korea and from China. Um, these are all buying opportunities right now. I see stories about, hey, this is not good, but this is an opportunity right now to buy because when this disease, this virus has burned itself out, you could have gotten in on a really great deal. I mean, exactly. So why not just take advantage, right? I
You could have
mean,
bought
in the
Microsoft in the
military
80s.
industrial complex right now, if we're not getting a lot of wars, well, we could always cause a global health epidemic, and
Oh, they'll always find a war. Well, yeah, but think about this, even just historically speaking, as a student of history, take the Black Death, right? Look at what that did from an economic standpoint. And there's more to it. That now, obviously, they're not the same. The bubonic plague was bacterial. This is viral. Bubonic plague was not made in a lab in Wuhan, allegedly. But who did it kill? The royals, or not the royals, just
it's been
the
hijacked a
elites,
lot
and I
from
feel we
what
should
it
qualify when we
originally
say
was, for sure.
Illuminati. What myself mean by that, I don't even like that term because, again, yeah, and they were good. They hated the Catholic Church, which was a monster, which will come full circle in a moment, but it killed the people who worked the fields. It whacked out all labor, right? And once it burned out, all of a
I don't
sudden
even
there
plow my
was
own fields
no
today.
labor. So the ones
I
that were
hire
left were
someone to
able to
come and mow my
negotiate
lawn.
for
I'm just not
much higher
willing to do it.
prices, right? Because what, you're not going to plow your own field? God, heaven forbid, right? But yeah, well, I look at this, and then you take what it shook up society. I don't think anybody can not look around and see that things are going swimmingly. It's pretty fucked up now. Income inequality, the yellow vest protests in France been going on for 18 months. Not so much as a peep of it on the news. So things are fucked up. Things were fucked up back then in the quote dark ages, right? Now, without the Black Death, you don't get the Protestant Reformation. Without the Protestant Reformation, you don't watch the Catholic Church have to let its stranglehold go a little bit, right? Because everybody believed in the church and listened to everything they had to say. And then, I'm doing everything you're telling me. Everybody's dying. Maybe you're not all knowing.
Yep.
Hence Protestant Reformation and X, Y, and Z. And it's not like there's not too many leaps that you have to jump to get to. Yes, without the Black Plague, there is no Martin Luther. He doesn't do that, right?
I,
So maybe this
it
could
definitely
be
could be. I mean,
be the
you
thing
could
that
look
kind of
at
kicks it
this
off, and we get
as
to
an
you
opportunistic
know shake up the board a little bit, as it were.
situation for certain people, right? And it's not going to be the people that have no health care. They're fucked. Um, yep. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's
everybody
right.
in the fields,
Because we
you're
don't
fucked.
want productivity
And
to
you
go down.
can't get out of it either. You can't
And
fling
you could
yourself
look
off
at
a
it a lot of
building to
different
avoid it
ways,
because we
I
put
mean, when you
nets
look at
in.
these stories that come out, who controls the narrative, right?
Well, when I was born in the year of our Lord in 1980, there were over 790 independent media outlets, right? Major ones, I guess you could say, print, airwaves, X, Y, and Z. Now there are five, right? So Jeff Bezos didn't buy the Washington Post because he loves news. He bought the Washington Post because he wants to control the narrative. And if you don't believe me, I'd encourage you to read the Afghan papers that were published in the Washington Post. And they just so happened to be published in the Washington Post 2 weeks after the Pentagon announced it was not going with Amazon for their cloud services, but in fact going
Absolutely.
with Microsoft. That was a fuck you to
anytime
them.
you
control the narrative,
can,
you control the
put
people.
a different spin on a story. You look at the stock market, you see that 23,000 people added as of this weekend. I guarantee you Monday the stock market's going to go down, right? Because they're going to look at productivity. The minute that something positive comes up, after I've bought those stocks, hey, I just made a little bit of money, right? I can sell it. One would have to look at Amazon and wonder why their stock hasn't been hit near as hard as a lot of others. Granted, they aren't necessarily manufacturers, but a lot of the stock of things they carry is made in China.
China. And that's, if anybody has stuck with us this long, I'm speaking directly to you, that one person, probably a truck driver, probably bored, probably wondering why you haven't swerved your big rig into oncoming traffic listening to the sound of my nagging baritone. But the big overarching theme of this show is going to be who's behind the curtain. And is it absolute chaos or is there a hidden agenda? Personally, you got little column A, little bit of column B, if you ask me, that is. But I think in this case particularly, we are using Hanlon's razor,
And I
which is
would agree.
don't blame
I think
nefariousness,
it's,
where you can
an
blame
accident
incompetence.
that
We're using
has
Hanlon's
gone out of
razor to
control.
slit our own fucking
And
wrists.
we're taking advantage of it from the perspective of the United States by flying folks back from the Diamond Princess to take a look at that virus a little closer. I know, and that was Hollywood, written by liberal elites.
For God's sakes, man,
Now
they
we got
impregnated
people that are
Sigourney
willing
Weaver
to-
with a xenomorph to try to bring it back. This is just fucking cold.
Someone would have to go back and look. Might have been Weinstein's baby, not really the alien's baby, but
was that produced by Weinstein?
Allegedly, yes. That's a different podcast.
Yep.
See? A different day.
Oh, you mean the one that he
what's
made Sigourney
happening
Weaver get an
there.
abortion on, allegedly?
Yeah, I don't think there's much else. I think that we've kind of explored it down every possible vein that we could have went down.
And that's that, man. That's all I got.
That's true. But the question is it a conspiracy or are we just illuminating?
And if done correctly, it
where
should have
the
been
truth
completely
might be,
erratic and all over
even
the
if it
place,
is
like any good
incompetence,
conspiracy
because
is.
You can have an incompetent conspiracy. You can have a cover-up. A cover-up in itself is a conspiracy.
Well, and if you don't believe in
And as
conspiracies,
two
you
white
don't
males,
believe
we
in
have
America.
benefited greatly.
Because a bunch
So
of
we will,
rich, slave-owning, aristocratic white males
not
conspired
completely say that we are
to make
upset
this
with them,
motherfucker.
but at the same time, we're kind of pissed with them. But it helped us out.
Oh. I know what you did. And
We know what you did.
don't really hate it because, again, I mean, I probably missed the glory years of the 50s and 60s of being a white male. But I know what you did. And again, you look at all these things with the bioweapons, and I'll leave you with this, right? When Oppenheimer and everybody else is doing the Manhattan Project and they're getting ready to detonate the first nuclear bomb, there was half of that team of scientists, again, the smartest eggheads in the world, that said, don't fucking do it. There is a very good chance that when you detonate that bomb, the entire atmosphere of Earth will catch on fucking fire. And they did it anyways. Because fuck those other guys.
Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll look at the next podcast shortly.
They were wrong and they never lived it down, I'm sure. But that's it. I'm out.
That's true. We need a lot of listeners to be able to get any kind of ad play.
Please help this become successful so we can bombard you with commercials at this point.
And all those things happen to be in James's basement.
And this episode was brought to you by canned food and shotgun shells.
James,
not shotguns, because they're too expensive.
From the Conspirati Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again soon on the other side. Bye-bye.
Nip High football rules.